This is another presentation of purely descriptive statistical findings from my research survey into the character traits of polyglots. Ever since I posted a video last week on the general findings, there was a comment asking about musical traits that seemed to stimulate the most interest and response, particularly over the past couple of days. It's turned into a very extensive exchange of ideas and information. That's very gratifying to see. That's exactly what one hopes for in making this kind of educational video, that the comment section can turn into a forum for shared learning and ideas. So I'm very happy to see that, and I want to contribute to that by not sitting on these facts that I know, but feeling it incumbent upon myself to share this information, even though I've not done any analysis yet, and I'm just sort of thinking through the process myself as I show you the findings that I have regarding polyglottery and musicality. Starting from the presupposition that there is some sort of link between language learning ability and musical ability, I come up with the hypothesis that those in more advanced stages of polyglottery will show greater musical aptitude than those in less advanced stages of the condition. Just let me say, for anybody who might be joining this discussion for the first time, polyglottery is a term I use to describe the process of falling in love with learning languages, wanting to do it more and more, better and better, and making this sort of part of your identity so that you end up becoming a polyglot, versus other ways of becoming polyglots. There are polyglots who may be, say, diplomats who just regard languages as tools. Scholars likewise. I've known scholars who know lots of languages and don't love them. They resent the time that they have to put into them, but they just need them to do their research. So polyglottery is those in the polyglot community, and those are the people that answered this survey. I now have 725 full responses, which come in the same basic areas from before, this global outreach to the survey, but a quarter of the people come from the United States, a quarter from Western Europe, a quarter from the rest of Europe, and a quarter from South America, Africa, India, the rest of Asia. So while this is a survey of people around the world in the polyglot community, I think it's really reflective of the state of mind and culture in Western civilization here at the beginning of the second millennium. So I have taken my 725 people and again tried to make groups of them, roughly equal groups, to compare and contrast among them. I don't have any general statistics for musical ability. I'm just comparing the groupings among them. As I did last time, I used one question regarding the number of languages known to come up with sort of a low, a mid, and a high range of numbers of languages known. And another question is to the number of languages studied, again to come up with a low, a mid, and a high range of respondents of roughly equal numbers. Anybody who's really good at math might be adding this up in your head, and you'll see that both this sum and this sum is not 725 but 718. That's because even though I call for a numeric response, a few people insist upon writing out the number of languages, or writing out the names of all the languages they know, so that when I filter for numbers, those get lost. So I am going to put a link to the survey. It's still open in the description of this video, but if anybody should take it, please, this is precisely the information I need. Please, if it calls for a numeric response, please give me a numeric response. So now I'm going to walk you through all of the questions that I ask about musical aptitude and musical ability, musical perception, and go through them in the same sort of bar graph type that I made before. At the top we have all 725 respondents. Then we have those who know less than 3 languages, that's 250 people. Those who know between 4 and 6, that's 265 people. Those who know more than 7 languages, that's 203 people. Then those who have studied less than 4 languages, 236 people. Those who have studied 5 to 9 languages, 233 people. And those who have studied more than 10 languages, 213 people. Once again, I use both of these because, as you can see, they come up with slightly different results. Sometimes that's very intriguing. And the people who know languages might have a lot of multilingual people in there, and whereas people who studied are people who've learned languages consciously. And finally, what does it mean to know a language? Some people have different definitions than others, so if we take both groups and look at the aggregate, I think we're getting a more accurate picture. So don't listen to music. 3% of all respondents said this, and to me it seems like it's about 3% of everybody in all groups, so nothing really to discuss here. I am tone deaf. About 5% of all respondents said this, and likewise roughly about 5% of all respondents here. I don't see anything really jumping out at me for the tone deaf question. But I'm musically gifted, yes. Here's something jumps out at you. About 16% of all respondents said this. For the no group, those who know fewer languages and know mid-range languages, both of them are considerably lower than this number. And then those who know the most languages, all of a sudden it jumps high, about 5-6 points higher than the average for the small sample population. And for the study group, we get one of these rare, nice cooperative ladders, sloping ladders going down. Those who have studied fewer languages know less than all the respondents. Those who have studied the mid-range language are sort of right about that. And those who have studied the most languages are also higher. So people who know the most languages and study the most languages are most likely to claim that they are musically gifted. I make music, I play a musical instrument, or I sing. A third of the respondents said this. Here we have the nice ladder with the no languages. People who know fewer languages, less than that do this. People who know mid-range languages are right around this number, and people who know more languages are more likely to play a musical instrument or sing. With the studied, we have one of these interesting jumps. Those who've studied fewer languages are less likely than the overall respondents to do this, but those who've studied more languages jumps all of a sudden higher, and it's actually the group who study 5 to 9 languages who do it even slightly more than those who study 10 languages. So again, we're seeing people who know or study more languages are much more likely to play music, make music, sing. I've had years of musical training or lessons. About 28% of all people do this. For the no, it seems to be all pretty much around that. But for the studied, again, intriguing jump. Those who've studied less languages are considerably less likely to have done this, whereas those who've studied more languages, and in particular those who studied not the most languages, but 5 to 9 languages, are much higher than that. So that's another interesting finding. I've studied music theory, about a quarter of people overall, except, just as in the previous one, with studied languages. Those who studied fewer languages are less likely than this sort of group average, and those who studied intermediate and higher are higher. Particularly the intermediate 5 to 9 languages are the most likely to have studied music theory. I can sight read music well. I've never understood why sight reading is such an issue, frankly. I play the flute. I think when I was 11 years old, I was given a musical aptitude test. It was basically a filter to be put in the school band or wood shop, and I was placed in the band. I was assigned to play the flute, and I've done so ever since. And because I've been doing it my whole life, reading music is like reading text. I didn't know it was an issue, but I have learned this over time that actually there are professional musicians who cannot sight read music, and this is considered to be one of the more difficult things in sort of like professional musical training classes. So I don't understand why, but there it is. So only 13% of people can do this, and the people who know the most languages, they're the most likely, 18%. Those who also studied 5 and 9 or 10 are slightly higher than that. The reverse of this one is I can sing or play an instrument but not read music well. So it's about 31% of people overall who respond to our survey say this, and for the no group, it's all pretty much in that range. Not a huge variance in the study group, but once more, it's the 5 to 9 languages studied that has the most ability to do this. So does this represent musicality? I suppose so. You don't need to read music, but if you can just make it, that's interesting. I love listening to music and actively collect and listen to my favorite types. Overall, it's about 64%. People who know music, all pretty much around that, but people who know the most, more likely than the others. Studied languages, again, it's the 5 to 9 group. It's not as drastic as some of the other things we've looked at, but these two studied more languages, 69%, over 10 languages, and 70.4% those who've studied 5 to 9. I listen to the radio, or my friends listen to, but I don't collect my own musical library. About 9% of people overall will answer this. It's pretty much steady all through these groups, but then when we come to the studied 5 to 9 and studied over 10, we find an intriguing, almost glitch-like thing that those who've studied 5 to 9 are the much more likely, not much more, 4% more than the regular average aggregate, whereas those who've studied more than 10 languages are the least likely to do this. I often turn on music for background atmosphere, but I don't always actively listen to it. About 35% of the overall respondents say this. For the no group, it's pretty much always around that. For the studied group, once again, it's the 5 to 9 language that breaks the overall pattern and is the only group that does this somewhat substantially more than others. But this is interesting. We're finding that this is the most musical group, and I guess you could certainly, now that I look at this, you could take this as indicating musicality, in that you're saying, oh, I love music, I always like to have it around me. But when I conceived of this question, this was sort of to say that you don't really listen to music, you just have it as atmosphere. I thought of this as a non-musical question, but obviously people are answering it in a different fashion. I don't turn on music on my own, but I don't mind it in the background. About 5.7% of all people say this. Here we're dealing with very small numbers of people who are answering this way, so the only thing that really stands out is the no 4 to 6 group is considerably more people will say this. I sometimes listen to calm and soothing instrumental music, classical, ambient, atmospheric, etc. while I read, write, study. About 35% of all the people who answered the survey say this. In the no group, it's the no 4 to 6 that is 5 or 6 points higher than that, and the no more than 7 that's 5 points lower than that. For the studied group, this is interesting. Both those who study less than 4 languages, and particularly those who study 5 to 9 languages, are higher than this, whereas those who study more than 10 languages are the lowest group, so the least likely to sometimes listen to soothing music while they study. About habitually always listening to calm and soothing instrumental music, classical, ambient, atmospheric while I read, write, study. Okay, we're about 20% of all people say this. For the no group, that's what it is for those who know intermediate and low range numbers of languages, but those who know the most languages are less likely. And for the studied group, okay, those who study less than 4 languages are right on that. Those who study 5 to 9 are about 5 points higher, and those who study more than 10 are lower. So people who study lots of languages are the least likely, again, to sometimes to listen to calm and soothing music, either all the time or sometimes. Let's go to loud and exciting vocal music, pop, rock, rap, while I read, write, study. Sometimes listen. About 24% of all the respondents do that. For the no group, it seems to hover right around that. Oh, this is interesting. For those who study more languages, the people who study who've studied less than 4 languages are the most likely to listen to loud and exciting vocal music, but also those who study 5 to 9 languages are more likely also. And those who study less than 10, here we see a strange drop, or sort of reverse ladder, they are the least likely to listen to loud and exciting vocal music, which seems logical, but then look at the next slide that totally turns this on its head. I always listen to loud and exciting vocal music, pop, rock, rap, etc. while I read, write, study. About 12% of people do that. I don't understand how anybody can do this. And it is the group who studies the most languages. 15.5% of people who study more than 10 languages listen to loud and exciting vocal music while they read, write, study. That makes no sense at all to me, but these are the findings. I find music distracting and would rather not have it playing around me when I want to focus. 31% of all people say this. So the no group is right around that, but the study group breaks the mold. Both those who studied less and studied the most are less likely to do this, and it's the studied 5 to 9 group that is most likely to do this. Again, I don't know the sense that people are interpreting this. I think this one here, they are taking it the way I wanted. I love music, but when I hear it, I want to listen to it. If I'm trying to focus on something else, I don't want to have it playing around me. So this one also does seem to indicate musicality to me, if they're answering it the way I intended it to be. I listen primarily to one main genre of music. Overall, about 11% of people. For the no's, it's all right around there. For the studies, it's pretty, yeah, there's nothing really dramatically different about the groupings here. I listen to several different types of music depending on my mood. About 64% of people overall in our sample survey do this. No's seem right around there. Not dramatically higher for the studied 5 to 9, but they are the highest. And then I intended this question and the next question to be mutually exclusive. I wanted this first one here, and you can listen to one kind of music. This was supposed to be 2 or 3 kinds of music, and the next one, I listened to a wide variety of different kinds of music. And just that, you listen to 4, 5, 6, 10 different kinds of music, but obviously people are answering both this one and this one, and now that I look at the wording, I can see how people would think, yeah, I listen to this music here, I listen to this music there, and I listen to lots of different kinds of music. So these are some of the dangers of survey wording. At any rate, I listen to a wide variety of different kinds of music. About half the people do that. It's right around that for all the no's. But then again, here we have once more the 5 to 9 group is the one that does this the most. So the group that appreciates the most kinds of music is those who have studied 5 to 9 languages. Those who studied less are less than that, right on there. So the observation I can make is that the hypothesis that those in more advanced stages of polyglotry will show greater musical aptitude than those in less advanced stages of the condition appears to be generally correct. However, in point of fact, of the 6 groupings of respondents based on number of languages known or studied, it is the group of those who have studied 5 to 9 languages that shows the greatest musicality. So, as I said, these are just preliminary, descriptive findings that I'm sharing with you because there's such interest in the topic out there. It seems selfish of me to hold on to them. I've just been musing through them with you as I did this. I just put this presentation together this morning and have gone over it once or twice by myself as I was doing this, but also aloud just now as I'm thinking through it with you. So I will throw this out there now for the same kind of hopefully interesting, intelligent exchange of ideas and information that the last video prompted. And I'll just permit myself sort of a last closing thought. Why should this be? You can go back and you can see that it was the groups who said that they knew or studied the most languages that claimed to have be the most musically gifted, but it's this other group that sort of intermediate group, I call it, who knows 5 to 9 languages that shows the greatest musicality. And I'm just going to posit that perhaps it's because those who study more than 10 languages spend all of their time studying languages. They don't have time to do things like listen to music that much anymore, whereas those who limit themselves to 5 to 9 languages have a bit more balance in their life and time to do things like listen to and appreciate music. Okay, that's it for this week. I will make another video next week. Thank you for listening.